Hi, I'm Erin Power.
And I'm Laura Rupsis.
We're certified health coaches, and this is Health Coach Radio.
This podcast is about the art, science, and business of health coaching.
We share our insider tips to help you become a better coach and entrepreneur.
And we interview expert guests to discover how they've made it in this growing field.
It's time for health coaches to make an impact.
It's time for Health Coach Radio.
We love talking to coaches, and our guest today, Chrisa Zindros Boyce, is such a coach. Chrisa is a leader with the Handel Group, a renowned corporate consulting and life coaching company dedicated to teaching people how to realize their personal and professional visions. She supports growing companies and industry conglomerates in designing cultures and structures that lead to increased employee retention, engagement, and profitability. And she has a strong roster of individual clients, including an international group of serial entrepreneurs, perennial corporate executives, and established individual contributors that hail from a broad range of sectors, including finance, entertainment, fashion, technology, nonprofit, and government. In her one-on-one coaching, Chrisa leans on her innate creativity, intuition, and sense of humor to offer a personalized approach to help her clients meet their goals. Through an in-depth process, she helps her clients mitigate bad habits and rebalance their priorities. We talk a lot about this art and science of coaching in today's conversation. We'd love to have you screenshot your podcast player and tag us on Instagram at Health Coach Radio. By the way, the show notes for this episode and all previous episodes of Health Coach Radio can be found at primalhealthcoach.com/radio. Without further delay, we invite you to eavesdrop on this conversation between three coaching nerds, including our most excellent guest, the Handel Group's Chrisa Zindros Boyce.
All right, Chrisa, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm good. Happy to be here.
Well, we are excited to talk to another very experienced coach that's been in the trenches for a long time. I'm sure that our listeners are going to get a lot out of your expertise and just your experience. We were talking before we started recording about just the value of your experience and to not let that imposter syndrome get in the way. So we'll get into that. But before we do, would you mind just giving us kind of the 5-minute backstory on who you are, what you do, and how you got here?
Yeah. So let's see. I'm an executive coach with Handel Group. I'm also officially the chief strategy officer for the company. So part of my job is to make sure the company is growing and scaling effectively. This is my second gig career. As I like to say, I worked in retail marketing and branding for many, many years, doing consumer experience, marketing strategy, and a bunch of other really cool things. The way I like to tell people is like when you walk into a store and you see the mannequins and the music and smell the scents, like that's what my team did. Mm-hmm. So it was a really cool job. But around like 2009, when everything was changing in retail, I decided that I needed help and wanted to scale my leadership. So I hired a coach to help me. And in hiring a coach, I got really connected to, wow, I love helping people too. And it would be great for me to learn how to help people. So I decided I would train to be a coach, not thinking that I was ever really going to do this job. I thought I would maybe moonlight, or it would give me some good skills to have at work and help me excel. But I fell in love with coaching and helping people. And I decided maybe about after 5 or 6 years of like moonlighting as a coach that I would do it full time. So it was a transition. We might end up talking about some of that today, but it was definitely a transition. I didn't want to leave my cushy job to do this and take a pay cut and, go from having a fun office in Times Square to working from my couch in my leggings. I was really scared about that. It took something to make that plunge, but I'm super happy I did it and would never go back. And this is really, truly my mission. So I'm happy that I was able to act on it when I did.
Nice.
Awesome.
When you started by hiring a coach, which I love that because it's really cool to be coached. Man, anytime I've ever had a conversation with a coach, it's like, man, coaches are amazing. We're so amazing. What kind of coach did you hire? Was it a life coach?
Yes, it was a life coach. So when I first came to Handel Group, which is a company I work for, I actually had done a little bit of dabbling, getting other coaches, and I did a bunch of self-help work and was really looking for ways to improve as a leader. And when I came here, I came through the life coaching company because at the same time of me wanting to take on my leadership, I was dating someone who was just like not that great. My was like, he was a little bit of a jerk. And that's a nice way of saying it. And so I was like, a life coach can help me in both areas, my career and in my love life. So that's why I started with the life coach. The truth really is that like a life coach really can help you get clear in your career, but a career coach really can help you navigate your career. And it's a different level of working with someone who understands the bureaucracy and how to navigate career. But I did hire a life coach. And it was, for me in the beginning, a really interesting experience because my family is Greek. And, if anyone's seen my Big Fat Greek Wedding, that movie is actually real. And we don't talk about our problems. We eat them and drink them. And so for the longest time, I didn't love my life coach. I really was like, she doesn't understand. And she doesn't have a corporate job. And she's, sitting in her house coaching people. What does she know? I really did not. I resisted the process. But she continued to present value for me. And that's what kept me hooked in the process. But I did want to fire her many times. Sorry about that. We're not friends, but sorry.
No, that's so great though. There's a lot of, I think, overlap between whether it's business coach, life coach, health coach. There's a lot of overlap in the coaching relationship, particularly if you're actually leading and identifying as a coach and you're not trying to be something else, right? We were talking about this before we started recording, that some people will come to health coaching, but what they're really looking for is a shortcut to like tell people what to eat or become an RD or fix gut health or whatever. And all that's great. And we can help people with those things, but that's not coaching. That's an ancillary part of kind of, what we do. So I would love if you wouldn't mind, because there really is no one standardized definition of what a health coach is or what a coach is in particular. So how would you define that? What is coaching?
The best way I like to say to my clients is that a coach sits on your board of advisors. And if you look at any, company or entity that is successful, that makes decisions, that makes an impact in the world, there's always the board of advisors. The CEO doesn't get to have the final say. They do have to report into somebody. And the reason why that structure is in place is because human beings, by our nature, just don't see everything. By our nature, we can't possibly look at all scenarios, predict things, know everything. So we need teams around us. And in some ways, we've done this a little bit inadvertently, right? Where we have like a doctor we go to, or a pastor, or maybe a therapist. But oftentimes we haven't, like by design, been like, I'm going to appoint you to like the person that helps me with this because I know you're good at that. I'm going to appoint you to that. Like we might have had a mentor from college, but I think for most of us, we haven't sat and go, who do I want to have on my board of advisors? As if I was like building a business and was hiring people for those positions and then was going to report into them. So that's what I like to define a coach for my clients, because I am one person on that board. And so that means that I might recommend you to go to somebody else on that board. And we'll probably get into this later, where even though I am a coach, I might say, you probably need to go to a therapist too. Or, you know what, like this is not working. We're not getting your drinking under control. If that comes up, we might need to go look at AA. Like I really am going to recommend put other people on your board if it falls outside where I think I could be impactful, because my job is to make sure that we get the best results for you. So that's how I like to explain it.
That's a pretty cool way of defining it. Like you're the CEO of your life and you have the support of advisors and they all have different areas of specialty. That's pretty cool. I like that. Mm-hmm. So going back to your story, after being coached, then you trained to be a coach. What kind of coach did you train to be and where did you get your training?
Yeah, so Handel Group, and I'll talk a little bit about the company first, is an executive life coaching company. So that essentially means that even though we have different divisions within the organization and we work differently with clients based on the division that we're in, when we're working with a client, we're looking at someone holistically. So it is that we're working on someone's whole life and we're taking on every area to ensure that they're the happiest, proudest, most productive person. If you're working with someone on the life coaching division, which is our biggest division, then you're mostly working on the areas of life that are the hottest topics. So money, body, relationships, and time. Those are the hottest topics. On the career side of things or the corporate side of things, you're working with somebody on their career, making sure that they're excelling. But then we're always looking at, and all the executives that I coach hate this, because on my first coaching session, I'm always like, okay, how are you sleeping? How are you eating? And how often are you exercising? And they're like, I thought this is corporate coaching. I'm like, it is. But if you're not sleeping, you're not great with your team. If you're eating really crappy, like you're not going to make a decision. So let's just tell the truth about those things now. So we take a very holistic approach. So I trained with Handel Group to be a coach with Handel Group, which means anybody who becomes a coach goes through the entire process of what it means to be a coach with us. And that means that you learn how to coach on all different levels of someone's life. And then you can decide where do you think you're a better fit. So then you get to go decide to be either in the corporate division when you're working with teams and companies and helping them scale and executives, or in the life coaching division where you're working really one-on-one with people and you're really inside their life, navigating all different elements of who they are. So that was my training. I always say the joke that going into Handel Group exec or coach training was like going through Harvard. It was probably the hardest thing I ever did, because in our training with people, we really do have them go through the entire method themselves. So they have to take on literally changing every part of their life, like following all their own rules, dealing with their parents, like upgrading their relationships before we even teach them how to teach that to other people or coach anybody. So it was a very in-depth process. So everyone at HG really does walk the talk.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Yeah. And kind of, I want to go back to your story, like Erin did too. I heard you say, and the reason I'm going to bring this up is because this is a very common path for health coaches as well, is that, I didn't want to leave my cushy corporate job. There's a lot of comfort in that, but that you did do this sort of part-time for a while. And then eventually kind of made the transition. And that was my path. That was Erin's path. A lot of people go that direction, and it works very well doing it that way for a lot of people. So could you speak a little bit to, I guess, what that was like trying to juggle all that? And at what point, what was your aha moment to be like, now's the time. Now's the time to leave and just take the leap?
Yeah. Well, when I first started, after I finished my training program and then I became a coach, it was just very fun. I really did think of it almost as pro bono work, which is probably a horrible way of saying it, but it really was my time to go give back and be with people and help people in the way that I was helped by my coach. And I wanted to really contribute that. And so at work, I got to go be all head and, solve problems and be business. And then in coaching, I got to be all heart and in like taking care of people. And so for the longest time, it really was just like something fun that I did that just made me feel like I was contributing back to like humanity in some way. But what happened eventually is that the scale was getting tipped. I was saying yes to taking on more clients and happy to work until like midnight talking to clients on the West Coast, even though I'm on the East Coast and worked all day long. Like I really did take coaching sessions at 11 o'clock at night. I really was working on the weekends, like a few hours, and I was happy to do that. And when I took a step back, I realized I'm doing more and more of this because I want to actually be doing this, and I'm not fully telling the truth about that. And one of the things that we teach in coaching, and one of like Handel Group principles, is that you have to tell the truth about what you want. Like write out your dream for yourself. And so when I wrote out, this is an assignment we give our clients to do every 6 months or so, or every year, to kind of, okay, what are you inventing going to the next year? But as a company, we coaches do it every single year. Like, what are you taking on? So when I wrote out my career dream, it had nothing to do with my day job. It was all about like speaking, influencing, helping people. And there was like one little puny sentence that I like to say, and like my team at work is really happy. And it was like so sad. I'm like, I don't even care about that anymore. It's time to go. It's really like, I'm done. So there was that truth I had to confront. And then for me, it was also this interesting time of, for anyone who remembers 2009, the world changed quite a bit. We're back in that now, people. But the world changed. Retail changed a lot. My job morphed. My team changed. And that time had a continuing effect for the next few years. And so I was really living in, do I want to continue to do this, knowing that this industry is changing, and I was being confronted by shifts in my own company. So it was really that intersection of, I'm taking on more clients and all this stuff is changing and it's not what it used to be. And there's a little bit of a push from the universe, which is always, when you don't listen, it kind of kicks you in the ass. I got a push. I didn't get kicked in the ass, which was good, but I got a push. And then I was like, okay, time to go.
Yeah. And there are a lot of parallels to 2009 to where we are today. It might not be, well, it is financial, but caused by something else. So there's, one of my roles so Erin and I both are on the staff of a health coaching school. And my main role is as the admissions director. And I'm hearing this from a lot of people that, gosh, if I'm ever going to go, like people are now rethinking employment for themselves because they've quickly realized what they've been doing in the past is not all that reliable. Am I essential? How am I going to continue? Right. And so, I was in finance. Speaking of your husband, you were talking about how your husband is, I spent 20 years there. And that period of time, 2009, was a debacle. And that cleared a lot of decks, man. A lot of people left. And I think we're in a similar time period in this time around with everything that's happening, both from a health front and from a financial front. So now we're seeing a lot of things converge. There's a lot of parallels to people having it. I just wish more people would look at it as an opportunity to rethink things. So, and I'm getting a lot more calls and a lot more interest in following that path because a lot of the upheaval isn't just financial, it's also health related.
Yes.
Which has just been huge. So, from the standpoint of encouraging folks to grab that opportunity, probably won't come around for another 10 years, right? This huge upheaval. I don't know, what kind of advice would you give somebody that's like, gosh, I really want to because the timing seems right, but, right? They've got the but and it's holding them back.
Yeah. Okay, there's so many things to say about this. And probably one of my favorite topics to talk about. So I do want to address one point that you said, where you were like, I wish people would just see the opportunity. In coaching, especially at Handel Group, we use language that's pretty visceral. So I'm going to use some visceral language. Mm-hmm. And we do it on purpose because we want to shake people, right? We want to get their attention. We want to move them. So one of the things I tell my clients is that you can be in like gen pop, right? Like general population of everybody who just kind of lives in this is what's happening, right? Mm-hmm. Like be good, follow the norm, or you can rise to be a leader. Mm-hmm. If you're a leader, you're not living in the current circumstance. You're not living in gen pop. The leader is plotting the future. The leader's a little crazy and can see opportunities. The leaders, of our time, like Martin Luther King or Gandhi or like anybody else that we can talk about, they did not live in their current circumstances. They kind of had to be a little bit crazy and envision a future that was so far from the reality that they were living in. And we all have the opportunity in our life to go be that leader. It's just a decision. Am I going to be in gen pop and live in the current circumstances, or am I going to go be in like the visionary that I could be? Like that's really the option. So the first thing is like really make that decision for yourself. Like go decide, who do you want to be? And if you want, like, it's okay. Like it's okay to be in the current circumstances if that's what's comfortable, what makes sense for you. But if it doesn't feel right, and when you're almost like divorcing yourself from yourself, then you have to step up to leader. So that's my first piece of advice. And it's always going to be a choice for us. And the people who literally live in the vision during this time will make opportunities. There's always people making money. There's always people getting breaks. There's always people winning. There's always people closing deals and getting jobs. And I literally live in that. I see clients all the time make transitions despite the circumstances, right? It's only because they live in the vision of it all. So that's the first part. The second part is you got to deal with your real reality and make sure you have a plan. So a lot of what gets people kind of stuck is like, oh, the money, oh, my kids, oh, whatever. So if you haven't done the work to really address your issues or worries point for point, then you're not going to be able to take the leap because you're always going to feel uncomfortable because you didn't figure out the money yet. You didn't figure out the childcare. You didn't have the hard conversations with your spouse or whomever. So making sure that you do the inventory of like, what are the things I have to go deal with? And then creating a real plan to go deal with them. And then as a coach, I would always say, like, get yourself in the right action. Like, tell someone you're going to deal with this. By when are you going to deal with it? Have someone hold you accountable. And then at Handel Group, we like to give people consequences. Like, okay, if you're really not going to talk to your husband about this, then like you lose your wine until you talk to him. Like, let's incentivize, right? Like, or like, okay, cool. Like, you're not going to put the budget in place, but until you do, like 20 burpees every night. Like, let's really about this, because human beings, like, we really do understand stick and carrot. Like, we really do get it. And unless it's like I'm feeling it in the moment, we'll continue to kick the can down the road. So deal with your list, create the inventory, and then put in place what promises or actions with the right incentives and people holding you accountable to follow through. So those are the things that are required. The last thing I will say, though, is that on the other side, you have to know your BS. There's always going to be an if, there's always going to be a but, there's never going to be enough money. There's always going to be a shitstorm in your life. It's never going to be different than that. It's always going to be that way. So whatever made up reality of like someday it'll be better and easier to do this is not true. Like it's not true. So, you know, when I left my job, I had lots and lots of money in the bank, a big 401k. Like, you know, there was no financial reason why I had to worry, but still my worry was money. Like, and it didn't make any sense. And I was like, and the question was, how much more money? And it's like, I don't know, much more. Like, there is no answer. The money's never going to solve my problem. I'm just scared. I'm just scared to believe and make a mistake. So let's also deal with your BS on the other side.
Oh, I love this. You know why I love this? Because so we're coaches. We're all coaches here. People listening are coaches or aspiring coaches. And I always think this is so cool. It's like our clients are going to come to us with the same BS, kind of how you put it, like vague goals that have no meat on the bone, you know, or vague, you know, oh, I just need to be more prepared. No. And I say, don't let them get away with it. Okay, what does that mean for you? How unprepared are you now? Tell me how unprepared you are now. Why are you unprepared? What does being more prepared mean? What resources do you need in place to be more prepared? Okay, go out and get those and report back. Like, we need to take goals, these goal bulls by the horn, but then we have to tag the accountability piece onto it as well. Like, you can't just get away with, you can't let yourself get away with it, guys. You can't let yourself get away with, oh, I'll do that. You know, I'll be a coach someday. This isn't a good time now. Why isn't it a good time now? And when will be a good time? What will that look like? How much money do you need? How much time do you need? What support do you need? Like, get into the weeds. We can't just lob these vagaries out there and let that be what holds us back. We can't do it. We would never let our clients do it. We can't do it to ourselves. There's so much personal development in developing coach development. We really, it's wild to me. Like, when we train coaches, we're training them on nutrition and fitness and how to coach. We're also training them to get into their own stuff. Like, you've got to do this work on yourself, right? So one thing that I wrote down when you were talking is this tool that we teach is called Decisional Balance. And it really is one of the most awesome reality checks. So you might say, oh, I can't be a coach now because I need my paycheck. Okay, so if you stay in your current job, what are the pros of that? I get a paycheck. I got benefits. My boss is nice. Great, what are the cons of staying? Well, I'm not following my passion. I'm not living my authentic expression of self. Great, now we flip the script. Now it's like, what are the pros of leaving? And the pros of leaving, well, there's a million. Like the bottom of this decisional balance grid is when things get really compelling. Like, the pros of leaving are amazing. The cons of leaving, there's none. I can't think of one. I don't know. I don't know. Like, it's this deep work that we have to do in ourselves as coaches. I feel like that's what I took from you when you were telling that amazing sort of rundown of the 3 things we need to work on. Do the inventory, create a real plan, and know your BS. Like, we would not let our clients get away with any of those things. So as somebody who has become a coach, trained to be a coach, what can you speak to, like, this whole idea of being your best self and having this sort of personal development mindset and this growth mindset stuff? Like, really, how important is this for us as coaches to encourage in ourselves?
Paramount. Like, you can't go be a coach and then not have done the work on yourself. whenever you're working with somebody in any part of their life, whether it's health or time or money or career, if you haven't been able to understand yourself in that area, there's no way you're going to be able to help somebody understand themselves. You're just going to miss things, because what happens is when we're not being fully transparent, or we're not really fully owning who we are hiding it or protecting it. So then we won't see it in somebody else, and we definitely will not call it out in somebody else, right? It's why when if you've ever had a friend where like they have a bad habit and you kind of do it too, but you never call them out on their shit, because if you do, then you have to call yourself out too. So you just perpetuate this really bad sort of like behavior in this relationship. So it's like, you don't call each other back, she doesn't call you back, you don't call her back, like whatever. So you have to be able to call it out in yourself first. It's really important. The other part I would say is, fundamentally, you have to know the inner workings of your mind. And there are just some truths about all humans that we have to just like sit in. Human beings, we really truly have this like very early crocodile brain that always informs us, right? And there's plenty of different ways people talk about the crocodile brain. And at Handel Group, we give it like 2 funny names. We call it either your chicken, which is the voice of fear, so fight, flight, freeze, or brat, which is the voice of the path of least resistance. And you have to get that your chicken and your brat is not super simple necessarily the way you hear it. Like, your chicken might just be scared, but it'll say to you, yeah, you know what, it actually makes more sense. I'll wait for the next bonus to come in, and then we'll save some money. We'll put some money in investments. And then in 2021, I'll make the leap. You know what, my husband is going to start a new job. So, and you think this is rational, but actually it's just your chicken afraid, manipulating you. That's all it's doing. And we fall for it every single time. So being able to understand how that croc brain, or your chicken and your brat, as we like to say, talk to you and psych you out, and being able to call that out is really useful for pushing yourself forward and being able to help your clients, because then you can hear it in them too. Because we're smart, capable people, it sounds very sophisticated. Like the response of, why didn't you get up and work out today? It's not because you had a meeting and you wanted to feel like refreshed for your meeting. It's because you're a brat. You didn't feel like it. It's more comfortable to lay in bed and blow it off and say you'll do it later and know that you're not. Like, that's what it is. Let's tell the truth about it. So the answer to your question, it's paramount. It's important to understand your inner workings. And unless you do, you can't help other people get there. So you're always going to butt up against that croc brain that's literally there to just protect you and keep you safe. And if you listen to it, you're always only going to be surviving. You're never going to be thriving.
Right. That's such a tremendous point, right? The whole notion of, if you're not willing to feel a little bit uncomfortable, exactly it. You're just sort of always surviving and not thriving. And I hear it all the time from folks that are interested in becoming a health coach. I hear all the time, well, now is not a good time. Okay, well, when will be a good time? Is there ever really going to be a good time? What does that good time look like? What are the consequences of maybe starting this now, and what that might look like? It's more often than not. And again, I came from a sales background. The whole now is not a good time, I know, is always just I'm not a buyer right now, right? I'm not ready to do it. But in this realm, it's a little bit of both. It's a little bit of I'm not ready, I'm just window shopping. Maybe I'm looking at a couple of other programs, or maybe I'm looking to, I know I want to transition. I'm not sure health coaching is the right direction I want to go. I'm thinking of maybe going, in another direction or whatever. But it's also a little bit of the unknown, because doing this work and leaving what you've always known is really scary. I don't know about you, Erin, but I was terrified when I first just left. I wasn't terrified to get started. Like I took my course and I got out and I wanted to help people. And that was just fun for me. Like you were saying, Chrisa, right? How about how it was just like philanthropic work or like pro bono work. You just loved doing it. And I felt the exact same way. Where shit really got real, there's my swear word, was when I had to sit down with my husband and we were really like, okay, if I'm going to do this for real, what do we need to do? How much money do we need? We went through the inventory. I didn't realize I was doing it at the time, but we did. We went through what's really the worst case scenario, and when we kind of identified what that worst case scenario was, it was like, Yeah, but how likely is that really? You know, and what's probably a more likely scenario? And that's kind of what we went kind of operating with. So when you're working with clients that are scared to make that transition, and I mean, how often is it really like now it's just not a good time versus it's just the chicken? And how do you help them sort of identify?
Okay, so the first piece is that when it's really like the truth, it's very simple.
Okay.
Like when it's really like, I'm actually really tired and to go to bed now, I can't work out. Like I was going to go to the gym, but I really have like a migraine to go to bed. It's super simple. There isn't a lot of justification. It's not overly complicated. It's not flowery. It's just like really simple. Mm-hmm. When it's not the truth, it's very convoluted. And there's a lot of, it's like when you were a little kid and you lied to your parents. Like there's a lot of details in that story. It's the same thing as an adult. Like there's like less details because it's like the truth is I have a migraine, I need to go to bed, right? But if it's like actually a bunch of like your chicken trying to psych you out or your brat trying to psych you out, like then it's that's the indicator. And one of the things that happens, and I teach this to my clients, is that like your chicken and your brat sometimes get married and they have babies. Okay, and the babies they have are procrastination, overwhelm, confusion, overthinking, anxiety, perfectionism, like worry, okay, like impatience. Anybody experience these things? Like, wow, humankind, right? And what's true is we get stuck in the whirlwind. Like the point of these particular states of thinking and being is that they're diversions. They're just there to divert you. So confusion, for example, is something that comes up quite often. Like I was very confused. I wasn't sure. Should I leave my job? Like, did that make sense? I worked so hard for my career. I'm going to leave it and become a coach. Like, what am I thinking? They have no benefits. They are going to pay me less than half of what I was making before. Like, oh my God. Okay. The truth is, if I really broke that down and that confusion, if I really said, okay, what am I being a chicken about? Another way of saying it is, what am I being afraid about? And make that list. And then what am I being a brat about? Meaning, what am I like, I don't want to do. I feel like I don't deserve to do. I'm like too lazy to do. Like make that list. And then go deal with it head on. Some of the stuff that you're going to have to go deal with is I'm afraid to fail. Okay, well, that's always going to be the case. Right. Or I don't really want to leave my job. But are you ever really going to want to leave it? Because it's comfortable. So is that really going to happen? Like you're going to have to go poke holes. And there will be one or two real fears to go deal with. Maybe one or two real like things you have to deal with in terms of your level of comfort. Like you're gonna have to tell the truth. You can't shop as much or whatever your thing is. That might really pop up. But mostly what you're gonna confront is that whenever you're up to something big, that primal instinct to keep yourself safe and comfortable is going to kick in no matter what. And if you don't know how to shut it down and redirect it and go, this is not actual danger, this is my dream, it's always going to win. And then it'll be 5 years from now and you'll be wanting to be a health coach in 5 more years. You'll be wanting to leave your job in 5 more years. It literally will just be on your resolution or in your vision board or whatever over and over again until you finally go, I'm just being a chicken or a brat about it.
Yeah.
So we identify our chicken and our brat and all their little weird chicken brat babies. Which I kind of like this sort of like I'm getting a tough love vibe here, which I like. I like that. Do some people not like it? Like you work with people who are really resistant to owning their BS?
When I first came to coaching, I was that person. I wanted to fire my coach quite often. I was like, how dare you call me a chicken? How dare you? I was like, I'm paying you. What do you mean? The truth is we have to work on both sides. We have to work on the shadow side and the light side, right? The dark and like the light, the strengths and the weaknesses. And if we're not sure about our internal obstacles, no matter how much of a great plan we have, those internal obstacles are going to come up and we're going to butt up against them. So in our approach at HG, it's like, let's look at all the internal and external obstacles you might confront. So part of the external is like, okay, your budget, your husband, your kids, like those are obstacles. We have to deal with that. But what are the internal obstacles that you have to go deal with so that we can make sure you get to the result that you want? So it is not allowing clients to be in the results of it just is what it is. It didn't happen yet. It is what it is. I didn't figure it out. It is what it is. Like that's just, I gave up.
Oh my gosh, it is what it is drives me nuts.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, I gave up. I stopped trying. What happened is that you didn't understand your internal obstacles. So no matter how many great plans you had, how many actions you were going to take, your mind sabotaged you.
Right.
So we really do teach people that your inner dialogue, so all the things that you're thinking, which by the way, like your chicken and your rat live there, your beliefs about yourself, your beliefs about life, your personality traits and how you show up in the world, plus your actions equal your results. But your inner dialogue is always informing your actions.
Right.
So you're always going to get a result equal to your inner dialogue by proxy, right? Like that's just going to happen. A long time ago, this is when I first became a coach with Handel Group, I had a client who was very overweight. And actually her mom was coaching with somebody else in the company and got her daughter coaching before she went off to college. So she and I started working together and we put in place these actions that she was going to do. And it was like walking on the treadmill, doing yoga, just like beefing up physical activity because she wasn't doing anything at all. And she, in the beginning, lost weight. And then she started to plateau. And I was sort of like racking my brain. I'm like, but you're doing all these things. Like your mom is telling me you're going to the gym. She's watching you eat this stuff. Like, why are you not losing weight? And I kept kind of going like, I suck as a coach. I'm not really helping this person. And then I kept questioning her. And we had this conversation where I was like, you must be like, there was some version of, she was like running really fast in the treadmill. And I was like, oh my God, you must be like sweating. Like, I don't know why I made the comment. I just off the cuff remark. And I said it because I'm not a runner. And if I had to run on the treadmill, I'd be sweating too. So it's like, I just feel, she's like, oh no, I don't sweat. I'm like, what do you mean you don't sweat? And she's like, I don't be the fat girl at the gym sweating. I was like, what? So she was on the treadmill and then was not exerting herself. Like in the beginning, when we beefed up some exercise, of course she lost weight. She was doing nothing, but then her body like plateaued and she wasn't pushing and she didn't want to be the fat girl sweating. And that was the inner dialogue, right? The worry of like looking bad, people making fun of her, like believing that people were going to judge her, like wanting to, you know, keep looking pretty or whatever it was for her, like kept her from actually producing the result of losing weight. And no matter how many times I tried to like fix her exercise or her food, she like her inner dialogue was keeping her limited. So that's why it's so important for people to like do the work on themselves to understand their inner dialogue and their internal obstacles so that you know what's going to get in your way and you can plan for it. Like I know I'm a big chicken. I know I'm a people pleaser and want to tell everybody yes. So now I have to have a rule that says I have to say, you know, I can't say yes until like I vet it through. And at least 24 hours goes by because I will say yes to everything and then hate everyone that I have a bunch of stuff on my list. That's my fault. But that I will fall into that. The result of my day sucks or I'm overwhelmed or I didn't get everything done.
This is great. This reminds me, I'm reminded of our interview we did with JJ Virgin a while ago. And she said, we were talking about the same kind of thing. We were talking about like, we were actually picking her brain because she's a legend in the health coaching, fitness coaching industry. And we were like, how the heck did you get to be such a boss, right? And she was talking about these limiting beliefs and sort of this inner chicken. And she said, anytime you make an excuse for yourself, add the phrase, because I don't want to, at the end of it. Like, oh, I can't get to the gym 3 times a week because I don't want to. It's like, oh. Or I can't meal prep. I just can't meal prep because I don't want to. Like as soon as you put that on the end, you're stepping into just quickly owning your BS. Yeah. Like it's a real quick way of just like, okay, yeah, I just don't want to. I'm just being a brat, basically.
That is powerful, and I'm gonna steal it because I love it. Because it puts the onus back on you. It's not like some external problem like why you can't meal prep. You're just not planning it into your day. You're not like making your schedule accordingly, shopping, spending the time. You're instead like watching Netflix or whatever your thing is. So it's not that you can't, you just actually don't want to. So until you deal with like, I'm going to do it, even though I don't really want to because I know it's good for me, it's like in accordance with my highest values, you're never going to get it. You're never going to get it done for sure. Yeah. Yeah. And I just wanted to say that because there was the question of, do people not like some of this tough love, right? The truth is like there's always a balance to take with clients. And there really is pushing people. And then there's also keeping them like feeling supported and cheered on. But we have to work on both sides. And I would not be doing my job as a coach if I like realized, oh, you're a big brat or you're a big chicken. And then I let you get away with that. and not tell you, like, by the way, let's look at like how your chicken psychs you out or how you just blow yourself off all the time. That doesn't, like, I wouldn't be doing a good job, right? So I have to be able to provide the tools on both sides, and the delivery of that and doing it with love is what allows it to be effective for people and not feel like ostracizing, right? So if we're all coaching, it really is that, like, you've got to deliver hard truths, and people hired you to help them produce a result. And that doesn't always mean you're going to deliver the best news. It really is like you have to figure out how to say hard things in graceful ways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and this is the beauty of all these just tried and true basic health coaching skills, like reflections, reflecting back what a client just said to you and asking them, is that really true? Did I hear that right? How likely is that? And being able to reframe questions, all of these are very basic coaching skills that you're going to learn in any program that, when done well, are so powerful that allows you to do just that. Call them on their BS without saying that's BS, So, I mean, you can get the same, to your point, when it's delivered with love, and because the best part about these skills and the best part about what you're talking about is it just shows how engaged you are as the coach in what they're saying and how present you are for them. And it allows you to showcase just how open and how much room you're creating for them to sit in there, because they won't do it on their own. They're not going to sit in their BS by themselves. It's stinky and it's super uncomfortable. But when they've got somebody there with them, holding their hand and just really, is this really true? Makes a huge difference. And this is so incredibly common in the health coaching space. The negative stories, the assumptions, the repeated behaviors that we see over and over again from client to client. It's so common, whether it's the excuse to not exercise, whether it's sugar addiction is another really big one. So the other side of this equation in health coaching is it's not all behavior and mindset. There really is a lot of biochemistry stuff going on here and a lot of hormonal stuff going on here that is like a whole other animal and a whole other world. And having to sort of pair those things together can be a little bit dicey for people. But, so here's where I'm going with this. So the biochemistry side and some of this other stuff, it's not that it gives our clients a pass, but we are able to tag to kind of, here's what's going on, right? This is what I think is happening. And the good news is this is very much within your control. It's in your control if we change these things, these habits, right, that are kind of on the other side. And then being able to kind of draw that out in people. And I know you said clearly, you already gave us one example on how you do some health coaching with your life coaching clients. What are some of the biggest triggers or some of the biggest health obstacles you see that seem to get in the way for clients really being able to achieve some of their other health goals? I'm sorry, they're like life goals or business goals.
Yeah, the first part is that people before coronavirus, there was a lot of travel that got in the way. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times people would say, I'm traveling for work, I'm going to conferences, I'm in the airport, I'm at hotels. And so that circumstance always got in the way for them to be able to follow their eating schedule or exercise regularly. So that was one very almost like sort of like low level sort of thing that gets in the way for people. Mm-hmm. The other thing is sleep. Yeah. And people don't realize the impact of sleep. And since we have a very workaholic culture, and actually even more so now that we're all working from home in front of our computers, like the commute time is gone. So you just work that time that you were going to commute. What's working until 7? You were home at 7 regularly anyways. So who cares? So because we're constantly working and we have this almost like grind culture mentality, people really put sleep on the back burner, and that causes so many issues, not just the fact that the people can't wake up to work out or that you eat more crappy or crave more carbs, but then the hormonal changes that happen with the lack of sleep and cortisol levels going up, and then anxiety upticking because of it, or insomnia starting to set in because of worry. So those are the biggest categories that we butt up against in like the world of coaching an executive and helping them be happier in their life. Because I also do a lot of work with women. There's also that conversation of like, how do certain foods actually impact my hormonal balance, and really getting people present to like, gluten is not your friend, dairy is not your friend, right? Most of us, like, that is probably really true. And being smart about that and getting the right testing done to be empowered. Like in coaching, we always talk about you're the author of your life, right? You're the one in charge and you're empowered. That means you get to say what happens. If you don't have the data, we can't go put in place the right action. So getting people to finally deal with, I know I get really bloated after I eat dairy. Like, let's go find out, is there a real intolerance, or like you eat too much ice cream? Which one is it? Like, let's go get the data so we can figure out what it is we need to do to make you feel the best version of yourself. And many people are avoiding that. Like, I was avoiding it. I knew I had a gluten allergy for most of my life, and I just didn't want to go deal because I want to eat bread. I want to eat pizza. And it wasn't until my hair started falling out that I was like, maybe I should go get tested. And then I got tested, and surprise, I was right. And now I had to go deal with the reality. So getting people to go advocate for themselves in that way is also something we have to work with. And it's dealing with their chicken, because getting them to go deal with that is really, really challenging for clients.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways for clients, knowing, so it's like this two sides of the same coin, knowing that they are the author and that they really do fully have control over this. It can be either super empowering or super scary. And in many cases, maybe a little bit of both, because I don't know about Erin, but I'm sure this is true. And I'm sure you could say, I mean, I find as I'm working with clients who, they've set a goal for the following week and they weren't able to accomplish it, it's one excuse after another. In the beginning of almost every conversation, a lot of times this is what happened. As a result of this, I wasn't able to do this, instead of taking ownership of it. And don't get me wrong, it's not that there weren't outside forces. And sometimes legit. So one client I was working with, look, her mom died, that's a big thing. So I get that. Right. And, but at the same time, it's sort of working with a client to sort of accept where things are and where did you have control, where, how could you have, and at what point do you just say, I think maybe we need to change the conversation and focus on a little bit of something else when things go right. Because this comes up in health coaching a lot too, where a client is they're hiring you to go down one path and they have a particular goal. And then you get midway through your coaching relationship and all of a sudden either an event happened or they realize midway, you know what, that's not really what I want. Maybe I wanted to lose the weight, but now that I think about it, part of the reason I can't lose weight is because I have no freaking energy. I can't keep my head up, or I'm just unhappy and they end up having to go in a whole other direction. So, and sometimes we'll see this in our group, coaches not freaking out, but asking like, oh my gosh, total 180. How do I make this transition? How do I, help this client? So, I mean, how often do you find yourself, how common is that? And how would you, I guess, what tips would you give a coach in helping to navigate a situation like that? How important is it to keep that person on path, and maybe this other veer is really just an excuse because they're getting uncomfortable, versus, this is real and we might need to change directions?
So the first part of the question that I'm going to answer is that you have to have clarity on where the client wants to go. Like if the dream or result is ultimately I lose 20 pounds, like we don't lose sight of that dream. It's just, what steps are we taking to get there? So step one that you put in place may have been, some workout regimen or keto diet or whatever the recommendations may have been. And then you might go, oh, wait, that's the wrong action. We have to get you to go deal with like hormone imbalance or sleeping, or we have to get you to meditate because you're so stressed out, and no amount of working out, unless we take your cortisol level down, it's going to really help. So like you might have to course correct the action, but the vision stays pretty static, right? So you want to get a lot of clarity on what the vision is for the client. That's the first piece. The other piece is that I don't necessarily go on my client's ride. So if a client comes to me and says, you know what, I want to be a better leader and learn communication skills, I'm like, great, I'm going to teach you communication skills. But my job is to go, okay, well, what else is it? Because if it's a communication skill problem, then likely there are things you don't talk about, likely you avoid stuff, likely, you're bad at giving feedback. Like there's a world. So I have to be, and for all coaches, I really have to be thinking like 15 steps ahead and have a greater vision for the client than what they even came to me for. So there's always like what we're doing, like on the surface level, like the fun stuff in coaching. And there's always my other agenda, which is growing you up spiritually, growing you up emotionally. And when it comes to health coaching, you're dealing with someone's representation of themselves, their body, their health. And that's the relationships to yourself creates every other relationship you have. If you're not in love with yourself or good with yourself or keep a promise to yourself or, can feel confident in yourself, you can't do that in other relationships. So it's even more paramount for when you're working in that area to be able to go, this is my greater vision for you, that you don't let yourself down, that you don't martyr yourself out for your family, that you absolutely do advocate for your health because we can see you haven't done that for a long time and we have to go do that you do make time for yourself or prioritize self-care. You don't guilt yourself because of that. So it's important to always have that, like, what is your dream for that client too, that then you weave in so that when something happens, because it'll always happen, a job change, a person, a fight, there's always something's going to happen. And then you can't go off your game with them, meaning the vision is still there, but maybe the steps have shifted a little bit, but you still need to be really clear on when you're taking them.
Amazing. Yeah, this is great. I mean, I can tell, Chrisa, that you're a really exceptional coach and you get a lot out of your clients, or they get a lot out of themselves in your care. I really like to just like wrap my brain around how what we learn when we do these interviews with great coaches, how like I can sort of like intellectualize what I'm taking away here and put it into my coaching session. So let me know what you think about this. This is what I came up with. So, because Laura was kind of talking about when clients come with their excuses and they think their excuses are completely legit, and not that they aren't, but we want to get to this whole chicken brat thing, right? So, and I'm really loving that chicken brat thing, so I'm going with it again. So a client shows up with an excuse. I can't do this. This is too hard. So right off the bat, I hear that's the inner chicken. So a question. So as a coach, if your client presents on a coaching call with something like that, I just can't figure this out. It's too much. It's just, that's the inner chicken as far as I'm concerned. So a good question I would ask back right in that moment is, tell me what you're afraid of. So tag to the fact that that's a chicken talking, and then just ask your client, tell me what you're afraid of, and get them to sort of realize that they're coming from a place of fear. Another excuse I came up with was this whole idea, this comes up often, I sabotage myself again. I did it again. That's the brat. For me, that's the brat, right? The brat shows up. So when your brat shows up with your client, you say, I get the sense that you just want to do what you want to do. So tell me what you want to do. Like, I think those kinds of questions are really interesting to get a client. We're not going to call out like, hey, you're being a chicken, hey, you're being a brat, but we can ask questions that get them to recognize that. What do you think? How did I do?
You did great. What I'm hearing is that we're always tying back, no matter what type of coaching we do, we are always tying clients back to their highest values for themselves. And anything that is not going to equal that is, how we would say at Handel Group, out of integrity for them. And so your job as a coach is to always keep them in integrity, right? It's always keep them in alignment in some way. So like if the dream is, or what they want is that they're going to, feel, I'm going to make this up, like sexy and healthy in their body. Maybe they just had a scary thing happen to them and they want to regain their sovereignty when it comes to feeling sexy and healthy in who they are. Okay, great. That's the goal. Is eating like a bag of M&Ms equal to that? Like, does that make you feel sexy and healthy? Yes or no? No. Then we should not eat a bag of M&Ms. It doesn't mean you don't have a piece of chocolate. It just means you don't eat a bag of M&Ms. So to get you back in alignment, we have to outlaw a bag of M&Ms, right? Like for what you're doing, right? Like that's a physical action. So there's the physical world of it, right? There is the physical, what the people are doing. And then there's also the emotional piece of how people are feeling about themselves. So it's like if I ate a bag of M&Ms and then I beat myself up and I'm like mad at myself and feel guilty or ashamed, that also doesn't mean you feel sexy and healthy. So that feeling doesn't belong here. Like, can we get back to being accountable, as Laura was saying earlier? Like, accountability frees you up. Like, I chose to eat the M&Ms. I did not want to not stop eating them, so I chose them. And that was my empowered choice. And now tomorrow I'm doing an extra workout, back to healthy and sexy, right? And no guilt trip. So you're always in that game with people, aligning them with like what is in accordance with that highest value. So you nailed it. Yes.
That's great. I have to admit that I kind of want some M&Ms now, but I think, man, we've learned a lot from you, and we're kind of getting to the end here. So I would love to hear from you, even though you've given us so many nuggets of wisdom. Let's speak to the aspiring health coach right now. Those of you listening who are like, I think I want to do this, but I don't know, I'm scared or whatever. What's like your number one pep talk for somebody who's on the precipice of making this leap? What's the number one piece of advice you give?
So the number one piece of advice I'm going to say, it's a little bit different than what I thought I was going to answer this as, but I would say that everyone really has a mission. And we absolutely really do know what our mission is. A lot of times we deny it because maybe when we were kids, people told us that was not a good idea. Maybe it's not accepted by society. Like, it really didn't make sense for me to leave my fun, fancy corporate job to become a coach, like at almost 30, like that, it makes sense, right? And so we get a lot of outside messages about what's right or wrong. And we have to be able to create our own measuring stick. So in order for you to go take something on, really devise your own measuring stick, right? And then really go get clarity on your mission. Again, most of us really do know it. Like, I think about my husband who, for when I met him, one of the very first conversations we had was that he always wanted to be an entrepreneur. And, he said that to me, and it was a very passing conversation, and a bunch of circumstances presented themselves, and now he runs his own company. But like, he didn't really tell the truth about that and or like allow himself to go do that because of all the reasons we can talk about, like really fancy paycheck, great benefits, worked in finance, like all these things. And he was so divorced from his mission, even though he always knew that was it. And the problem when you're divorced from your mission is that things just don't work out as easily. Like, you're just not as happy, things don't flow to you, abundance isn't as easy, relationships are harder because you're not in the right space. So every time you step away from your mission, you really do get consequence. You really do get a slap on the wrist from the universe, or like spit in the eye, whatever expression you like to use. And until you go step into your mission, that's going to happen. Like, I really was like overworked and underpaid for a long time because I was not stepping into, I really am meant to help people. I really should use my intuitive powers for good. I really am somebody who understands and has empathy. Like, why am I folding sweaters for a living? Like, that's not my mission, even though I'm good at it, not my mission. So I kept getting spit in the eye. And so knowing that, I think will help people shift. So absolutely get clear on the mission.
Ooh, I like that. And I like the get a new measuring or make your own measuring stick, because it's like, it's not a good time. It's irresponsible. Says who? Who says it's irresponsible? Who says it's a bad time? You get to decide.
Yeah, you know what? It's interesting too, because coming from the finance world, everything I did was driven by money, and me needing to make a certain income was 100% driven by this arbitrary, I was in a world where people that made that kind of money, and so the clothes I wore and the places, the restaurants I went to, the purses I carried, all that stuff, it cost me money to live that lifestyle. Whereas now, I was telling this story a couple months ago when I was moving from Illinois to Florida, but in a totally different career. I could honestly get by with a fraction of the clothes and the shoes and all this other stuff that I have right now. The lifestyle I live now, with the exception of my food, it's more than my mortgage, the amount of money we spend on food. But beyond that, it costs me far less financially to live this lifestyle, but also emotionally, it costs me a lot less. I get far more emotionally out of this lifestyle than I ever did in that other career. And so that's a prime example of changing the yardstick, where it was once defined by how much money I made, is now defined by just kind of my happiness meter and my own sense of purpose and whether I'm feeling fulfilled. It's very different now. So I think that's a fantastic piece of parting advice. So Thank you for that. I love it. Awesome. So tell people where they can find you, can they follow you, how can they hit you up and kind of see what you're up to.
Yes. Okay. So if you are interested in learning more about Handel Group and what we do, you can go to the Handel Group website. If you type my name into a little search button, a bunch of things populate, and you can see a bunch of podcasts that I've done, blogs that I've written, free things, webinars, all that happy jazz. If you want to email me directly, I really do like when people email me after podcasts, because then I feel like people are listening out there in the internet land. Yeah. I'd love to hear feedback. So you can email me at Chrisa@Handel Group. So CHRISA@Handel Group, super simple. Also, my email pops up when you go to Handel Group's website, and you can find information on me there. So that's what you guys can do. You can also find me on LinkedIn. Usually on LinkedIn, I post things about what's happening at Handel Group, but also things that I'm doing outside of the Handel Group world. And that normally has to do things with like women in empowerment, advocating for equal pay, speaking up for yourself, work-life balance, all those things. And that's on LinkedIn. So that's at Chrisa Zindros Boyce at LinkedIn. And for anyone who is like liking some of this conversation around chicken or brat, or like learning about how to match your, current reality with your values and all that, we have a digital program at Handel Group that really kind of takes you through all this stuff. So if you like the lingo and in your face approach, the program is called Inner You. There are multiple versions of it. We have Inner You Career, which is for your career. So it's different than Inner You Life, although Life will talk a little bit about career. Career really takes you through how to manage your career, like how to have the conversations at work, how to manage up, down, across, all those things. Inner You Life is about holistically your life. So if you want to work on any area, like on a light level, I would recommend that. But then we also have Inner You Love. So anybody looking for love in the time of coronavirus, or is like with their spouse and like, oh my God, we've been together for way too many months and feeling it's like you might choke them. Inner You Love is intended for people who are looking for love or want to recalibrate love in their relationship. So those are programs, if anyone's interested in, can check out. And it's all on our website.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chrisa. This has been fabulous.
This podcast was brought to you by Primal Health Coach Institute. To learn more about how to become a successful health coach, get in touch with us by visiting primalhealthcoach.com/call. Or if you're already a successful health coach, practitioner, influencer, or thought leader with a thriving business and an interesting story, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us at hello@primalhealthcoach.com and let us know why we need to interview you for Health Coach Radio. Thanks for listening.